You might know someone like this. Or, quietly, painfully, you might recognize parts of yourself. You notice it in the small moments. In the way serious conversations suddenly turn into jokes. In the way accountability feels like an attack. In the way emotions are either minimized, deflected, or avoided altogether. And from the outside, it's easy to say, they're immature. They just need to grow up. But psychology tells a far more uncomfortable truth. You don't become emotionally immature because you're careless. You become emotionally immature because, at some point, emotional depth was not safe. You learned, often very early, that certain feelings led to conflict, rejection, shame, or abandonment. So your mind adapted. It stayed light, surface level, reactive instead of reflective. Here is the paradox, the quiet contradiction at the center of emotional immaturity. The very defenses that once protected you from emotional pain are now the walls that prevent real connection. What once kept you functioning is now what keeps you stuck. You may appear confident, expressive, even charismatic, but beneath that surface is something fragile. A fear of emotional exposure, a fear of slowing down, a fear of being seen too clearly. And so instead of processing pain, you outrun it. Instead of sitting with discomfort, you deflect it. Instead of growing through emotion, you avoid it. This video is not about judgment. It is about understanding what had to happen for a person to stop growing emotionally and what it costs them now. Emotionally immature people are not underdeveloped intellectually. They are underdeveloped emotionally, and there is a critical difference. Psychologically, emotional immaturity is best understood as a form of developmental arrest. When a child grows up in an environment where emotions are dismissed, punished, ignored, or weaponized, the nervous system makes a decision. Not a conscious one, a biological one. It decides, feeling deeply is unsafe. Avoidant emotional regulation. One core framework here is avoidant attachment. In avoidant attachment, the child learns that closeness does not lead to comfort. It leads to disappointment, intrusion, or rejection. So instead of reaching outward, they turn inward. Instead of processing emotion, they suppress it. This is not emotional strength. It is emotional withdrawal. Think of it like a river that was blocked early in life. The water didn't disappear, it just stopped flowing. Pressure builds beneath the surface. Emotional inhibition as survival. Another key concept is emotional inhibition, the learned suppression of emotional expression to maintain safety or control. The immature person often learned that emotions made adults unstable, that vulnerability caused chaos, that expressing needs led nowhere. So they learned to stay light, detached, reactive, not reflective. Neurologically, this shows up as a disconnection between emotional awareness and emotional processing. The feeling arises, but there is no internal space to hold it. Arrested individuation. From a developmental psychology lens, emotional maturity comes from individuation, the process of forming a stable inner self that can tolerate emotion without collapsing. Emotionally immature people were never given the space to complete this process. They were not mirrored, not guided, not emotionally contained. So instead of integration, they learned avoidance. The true cost of emotional immaturity is not immorality. It is loneliness, a deep, often unconscious loneliness. Because when you cannot tolerate emotional depth, you cannot tolerate intimacy. And when you cannot tolerate intimacy, connection remains shallow, no matter how many people surround you. Carl Jung once warned that what we refuse to integrate becomes our fate. Emotionally immature people live this truth daily. They are haunted not by what they feel, but by what they cannot feel. They sacrifice authenticity for comfort, depth for control, presence for protection. Every serious moment feels threatening. Every emotional conversation feels like a trap. Every request for accountability feels like condemnation. So they stay in motion. They joke. They distract. They minimize. But the grief remains. The grief of never being fully known. The grief of relationships that never deepen. The grief of repeating the same conflicts again and again without understanding why. This is the invisible sorrow. To protect yourself from pain, you also protect yourself from meaning. Emotionally immature children become adults who struggle, not because they are incapable, but because they are unpracticed. You might see this show up as avoiding difficult conversations until they explode, taking feedback as a personal attack, using humor or sarcasm to deflect vulnerability, becoming defensive instead of curious, expecting others to regulate their emotions, leaving relationships when emotional depth is required, staying emotionally reactive rather than reflective. In relationships, they may crave connection, but panic when it gets real. In work, they may be competent, but struggle with criticism. Internally, they may feel restless, irritable, or chronically dissatisfied. And here is the most important reframing. These are coping strategies, not character flaws. They were learned in environments where emotional maturity was not modeled, not supported, and not safe. Healing does not begin with self-attack. It begins with witnessing, with noticing the pattern without shaming it, with saying, "This protected me once, but it no longer serves me." Healing emotional immaturity is not about becoming serious or perfect. It is about learning how to stay present with emotion without fleeing. This is where inner child reparenting begins. It means developing the capacity to pause instead of react, feel instead of deflect, reflect instead of defend. Shadow work becomes essential here, not to shame the immature parts, but to integrate them. To say, "I see why you learned this, and I'm here now." The Stoic philosopher Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." For the emotionally immature, freedom does not come from control. It comes from emotional capacity, from building the ability to sit with discomfort without collapsing or escaping. You are not broken. You are unfinished, and that is not a flaw. The goal was never to be fixed. The goal was always to become whole. If this resonated, share it with someone who avoids their feelings instead of feeling them. And remember, emotional maturity is not about never feeling. It's about learning how to stay. You are allowed to grow now.